You are looking down at your phone. A message just lit up the screen. It is someone asking for a favor. Maybe it is a coworker needing you to cover a shift, or a friend asking for a ride, or someone wanting you to look over their project at the last minute. Before you even fully process the request, your chest tightens, your stomach drops. Your mind is screaming a desperate, quiet plea for them to figure it out themselves. You are so profoundly tired. You have absolutely nothing left to give today, but your thumbs are already moving across the glass. You type out the words automatically. Yeah, no problem at all. Happy to help. You hit send, and immediately a heavy, suffocating wave of resentment washes over you. You are completely exhausted. You are stretched so thin that you feel translucent, like a ghost in your own life. Yet you just signed up for another obligation that you simply do not have the energy for. We call this being nice. We wear it like a quiet badge of honor, telling ourselves that we are just highly accommodating, empathetic people. We convince ourselves that being the reliable one makes us good. But if we are completely honest with ourselves, in the safety of this quiet moment, we have to admit that this is not just kindness. It is a trap. It is the nice guy trap, or the good girl syndrome, the perpetual people pleaser's prison. It is the subtle, daily act of setting yourself on fire just to keep other people warm. You are trading your own fundamental peace for the temporary comfort of someone else. And the hardest truth about being the person who is always there for everyone is realizing that your boundaries have become so invisible that people do not even see your sacrifices anymore. They just see your endless availability. I know exactly how hollow that feels, because for a long time, I lived entirely inside that trap. I used to be the person who said yes to absolutely everything. I honestly thought that my endless utility was the rent I had to pay to keep people in my life. I remember one specific weekend that broke this illusion for me. A friend of mine was moving out of their apartment, and they casually asked for a hand. I already had a grueling week. My battery was completely at zero, but of course, I smiled and said yes. I showed up on a Friday evening. It turned out I was the only one who did. For the next 8 hours, I hauled heavy furniture down 3 flights of stairs. I taped boxes until my fingers were raw. I swept dusty floors long after midnight while they mostly stood around. Around 3 in the morning, I finally drove myself home in the dead quiet of the night, my bones aching, feeling like a completely hollowed out shell. The next morning, I woke up late, physically destroyed. I reached for my phone and opened social media. The very first thing I saw was their story. It was a photo of them at a bright, sunny brunch with a completely different group of friends. There were clinking glasses, fresh pastries, and bright smiles. The caption read, "So glad the move is finally over, time to celebrate." I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no mention of me. There was no text asking if I got home safe. I was not invited to the celebration. I was only invited to the labor. In that moment, the resentment was so sharp, it physically hurt my chest. But as I sat there in the silence of my room, the hardest pill to swallow was not their thoughtlessness. It was the crushing realization that I had done this to myself. I had volunteered to be used. When we fall into this pattern, the behavior looks like selfless generosity from the outside. We smile through our quiet resentment. We constantly adjust our schedules. We minimize our own needs, and we volunteer for the heavy lifting of other people's lives. We become the emotional and physical shock absorbers for everyone else's stress. We silently take the impact so they do not have to feel it, convincing ourselves that if we just swallow our own discomfort, we can engineer a perfectly frictionless reality for everyone we love. But beneath that highly accommodating exterior is a profound, vibrating fear. You do not actually fear saying no. You fear the abandonment that you are absolutely convinced will follow the no. You are terrified that if you are not actively useful, If you cause even the slightest friction or disappointment, people will realize you are not worth keeping around. You are afraid of the word selfish. It is the ultimate weapon used against the people pleaser, and you will run yourself into the ground to avoid being labeled with it. This fear is driven by a heartbreaking core belief. It is the belief that your inherent worth is zero. You believe that you are not lovable just for existing. You think you have to continuously earn your seat at the table through acts of service. And the emotional cost of living this way is catastrophic. Over time, a silent, toxic resentment builds up inside you. You become a martyr in your own mind. You feel profoundly lonely even when you are surrounded by people, because you realize they do not actually love you. They love the version of you that never complains. They love the scaffolding you provide for their life, but they rarely look at the exhausted person standing underneath it, holding it all up. This dynamic bleeds into every corner of your life. You see it at work, when a coworker casually dumps their unfinished project on your desk at 5 o'clock on a Friday. You nod and say, "Sure, leave it with me," while quietly canceling your own evening plans to do their job. You see it in your friendships, when you are trapped on the phone for 2 solid hours, listening to a friend vent about the same problem for the fourth time this week. You have a splitting headache, you desperately need to sleep, but you keep murmuring, "I completely understand," because you do not want to be a burden by ending the call. You hold their emotional weight while your own battery completely dies. If you recognize yourself in this, I need you to hear this clearly. You are not weak for doing this. You are not foolish. You are a survivor. Somewhere in your history, probably very early on, you learned that taking up space was dangerous. You learned that being invisible, being compliant, and reading the emotional temperature of the room was the only way to stay safe. Being highly accommodating was a brilliant survival strategy when you were younger. You built this armor to protect yourself in an environment where love felt conditional. But you are an adult now. You are not in that environment anymore. The war is over, and you simply do not need to wear this heavy armor every single day. The reason it feels so impossibly hard to stop people-pleasing is that we approach it entirely the wrong way. We try to force ourselves to just set boundaries. We try to change the behavior, but we keep the exact same internal identity. Think about how we build any lasting habit. A few years ago, I decided I wanted to start working out. I would go for 3 days, absolutely hate it, and then quit for a month. I realized I kept quitting because my internal identity was, I am a lazy person trying to survive a workout. The behavior contradicted my core identity, so my brain naturally rejected it. The habit only stuck when I changed the underlying identity first. I started telling myself, I am a person who takes care of my physical body. Once I adopted that identity, going to the gym was no longer a forced chore. It was just a small, daily action to prove my new identity true. Setting boundaries is the exact same psychological process. You cannot successfully say no if your core identity is still the guy who is always there to save everyone. You have to shift the identity first. You have to start telling yourself, I am a person who honors my own capacity. I am a person who values my own rest. Once you hold that identity, saying no stops feeling like a cruel betrayal of others. It starts feeling like a necessary act of loyalty to yourself. Every time you protect your energy, you are just casting a small vote to prove your new identity true. You do not have to start with massive confrontational walls. You can start small, and you can do it without any aggression. The first tool to practice is the pause. The people-pleasing trap relies entirely on your automatic reflex to say yes immediately. You have to break the reflex. The next time someone asks for a favor, do not answer in the moment. Give yourself a buffer. Simply say, let me check my schedule and get back to you. That single sentence buys you the time to consult your actual energy levels instead of your fear. When you do need to decline, use the short boundary paired with an alternative. You do not need to over-explain, apologize profusely, or invent elaborate lies. Just deliver a short truth, and if you want to, offer a smaller choice that you are actually comfortable with. If someone asks you to help them move all weekend, you can say, "I cannot help with the move this weekend, but I can bring you guys dinner on Sunday night." If a coworker asks you to take over a project, you can say, "I do not have the capacity to take this whole thing on, but I can review the first draft for you tomorrow." You are still being kind, but you are negotiating the terms of your kindness so that it does not destroy you. You do not have to be an endless resource to be worthy of love. You do not have to perform exhausting labor to earn your right to exist in the lives of the people you care about. Real love, safe love, does not require you to abandon yourself at the door. It is terrifying to set that first boundary. It will feel deeply uncomfortable to watch someone experience disappointment because you chose yourself. But on the other side of that discomfort is the quiet, steady relief of finally getting your life back. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be tired. And starting today, you are allowed to finally put the heavy boxes down.